not able to keep up with the changing level of circumstance.
Agreed. Meanwhile, and further fleshing out of this little respite, this little calm we're in, the eye of the hurricane perhaps, the Dow is sitting at 11,782, went up $48 today. Everything's just fine, Cliff, no problem.
Happy days are here again. Yeah,
oil is down to 113. Gas prices are dropping. Nothing to worry about. Just get that TV on there, and you've got that. Go shopping, and
there you go.
No. This is bad, folks. This is not a good indicator. None of it.
And it'll break around the 15th of September and start really going into degradation around the 23rd, 24th, such that by the time we reach the 7th of October, according to our data, which is a forecast, it's not prophecy, not written in stone or anything, but by the 7th of October, we'll have about 40% of the general sense of anxiety that tips us over into the release period will be a result of economic concern. The other 40%, unfortunately, will be military. And then we have about 20%, which we call terra intrusion, which may be in the form of a very large storm or something like that going on somewhere on the planet. It's affecting what we call the global population rather than the population of the USA per se.
Right.
Unfortunately, we do these charts, which I don't know how valid they are, because most of our modeling is done 3D, and so to convert it to a 2D static chart, you lose a lot in translation. But if you were to imagine that you're on the roof of your house and you're working on your gutter and stuff, and you have a ladder there, and you go on over to your ladder to get down, and your ladder is just big enough to have maybe a foot or so sticking up beyond the gutter, that's the angle of the release language that we're going to have starting on the 7th of October running through until January. So when you're looking down, that's the kind of angle we see on our chart.
That's damn steep.
Exactly, to the point where all the rungs start running together, and you can't really pick one out when you're looking
down. It looks like a straight
way.
Slide rather than a ladder.
And the only way to get down to it is to turn around and feel around with your feet, and you know how risky that can be.
Wow. That's a very interesting mental image. I've been there, you've been there, and probably a lot of you listening.
Yeah, a lot of people have had to get up and do that gutter business.
Yeah, when you look down that ladder, and it looks straight down, and you can't see the rungs, and they start looking like it's one solid slide.
Yep.
That's what your graph. I know. I've looked at it. That's what the chart shows. I mean, it's just this incredible. Okay, let me help our listeners. What George and Cliff come up with is, and I called it anticipatory language. It's emotional building, is what it is.
Correct.
It's over a period of time, and then there is a point when this emotional building, it's up, and then it takes a different tact and goes down. And he's talking about that down, that release language now, and it is way the hell straight down. So this is no joke. And this is coming October 7th. And when you look at Georgia, when you look at this Musharraf and Pakistan, and then let's look at the Naval Armada. I mean, the largest aggregate of projected naval force in recorded history is gathering in the Persian Gulf.
And guess what? It's been authorized by a bunch of fools and idiots sitting in Congress, and I have to say the fools and idiots include my own Congress people, that are authorizing a blockade against Iran, which if I were Iranian, I would take as a declaration of war.
Absolutely, it's a declaration of war. A blockade is a declaration of war, and these people are not fools and idiots. They're traitors and they're criminals to the Constitution, to the honor of this country, and to each and every one of us.
Their culpability in
absolutely the worst.
Millions of people.
And the vote on FISA, and I could go on, the Patriot Act. These people are...
Well, let's drop any of that stuff in the past, and let's forgive them all of that. But this single mistake that they're making now, starting in October 7th, that sets off the activity in the end of October, may result in the death of 22 million people or more.
Can you say World War III? Be right back in just a minute. Okay, welcome back. And when you look at the MSM here in this country, the mainstream media, you kind of feel sorry for the average American who thinks he or she is informed when they watch the television. Here's the top story at Google News. The top story. Now, the world's sitting on the edge of, as you just heard Cliff say, and as we've been saying, a catastrophe here of really enormous proportions. Top story is Endangered Species Act changes give agencies more say. That's the top story on Google News. Second story is U.S. tells Russia to halt Georgia conflict. Well, must be a comedy sketch of some kind. I mean, here's George Bush, the rapist of Iraq, the genocidal maniac killer of over 1 million people in Iraq, and maybe 2 or 3 million in Afghanistan, we don't even know, telling the Russians to stop their Georgia incursion. I run out of words. And then you can look on, they're talking about John Edwards' affair. And then they're talking about days are numbered for Pakistani president, which locks into years. Musharraf is losing support by the hour. There's a worthy story. Then it goes on from there. Ousted ex-Thailand prime minister to exile in Britain. I mean, what is this? I mean, these people, this is not news, ladies and gentlemen. The priorities of what these people feed you are so ass-backwards, bought, sold, owned, contrived, and manipulated. It's sickening. That's why you've got to go on the Internet for your news, and I do hope you'll keep coming to Rense.com. I do my best to present the most honest panorama of real news that I can get my hands on, and it's a daunting task, but we do our best here, as do Clif and George. And I again would urge all of you to subscribe to their absolutely fascinating work. They predicted this issue we're in right now, this calm, this lull in the virulence of the financial crisis. You have a chance now to buy gold at around $808, and it's going to double. When the corks pop and the fireworks go off in the Persian Gulf, what do you think gold? The best efforts to suppress gold will be worthless at that point. Panic will drive it up immediately, and I don't know how high, but it's going to go. So.
Well, there's also issues there in terms of is the situation going to develop to be similar as Argentina? Will you want to sell gold at any price unless it's absolutely necessary as we go forward over the next couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
Will it become a trading vehicle? Will you be able to, prior to the 1930s, you used to be able to put gold in a bank and take out loans against it.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped that practice. It was actually kind of curious because that's what allowed the seizure of gold in the 30s anyway, was the fact that gold could be both used as collateral and legally insured. And so they had those records as to who had gold. Still, it only captured about 10% is the estimate that was in private hands at the time. But the problems are going to be quite severe as the dollar degrades, and it'll actually get to the point where it'll collapse. The military distractions notwithstanding, it can't be stopped anymore. The 1913 creation of the dollar started a debt pyramid, an inverted pyramid, where the sharp end is down on the dollar in 1913, and now it's hugely massive, and it must roll over. And unfortunately, it's going to take all of us with it. It's going to cause huge problems in South America, where many of the countries literally have their bank accounts in what are going to become worthless dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And they will have every right to come on up here and kick our butt,
mm-hmm.
For allowing such a situation to occur. Now, they were duped into it because we were apparently so successful, et cetera, but and still we have the American education system to blame for the ignorance level of our current population regarding our monetary system, which allowed, the subprime loans and everything else to go. So it's all interwoven there. Unfortunately, we're going to pay through the nose through our collective karma over these next 36 months or so.
Okay. The chances are, according to your data, your and George's data, 40%, that we're talking October 7th here again, the release date.
No, these are not chances. Let's not use that word. That's
okay.
Emotional loading.
Where do we go? Projections?
We have a forecast that on October 7th, and we're just picking the time at 7:10 in the morning, that we're going to get or we're going to actually change from the current period we're in, which we term as a building emotional tension, where we're all riled up and we don't know what's going to happen, that kind of thing, into a release language period. Release language periods could be very good. Everybody, yay, cheering, we rounded up all the crooks and we're going to have a big show trial and hang them all from lampposts. Okay.
Congress was arrested, you mean?
Exactly. Congress, pretty much the whole kit and caboodle. And we would all sit around and cheer, and the planet would be in a good time, and for 5 months we'd have a huge party. That could be release language. Unfortunately, it seems a little bit less likely than the alternative, which is the same level of emotional release where you run around screaming.
The ladder's too steep.
Correct.
All right, 40% financial, 40% military, 20% Earth, Terra.
Correct.
Now I'm going to talk about this for a minute. you and George and many of you listening know very well what's sitting on the edge of the Canary Islands on the western end, the eastern end, a volcano which has a 2-meter crack which literally runs apparently from one side of it to the other. And if this volcano should somehow shift and slide, fall, dive, plunge into the Atlantic, we might have an easy understanding of what all the language about flooding and inundation has been about in your work. That could do it, that in and of itself. That would be a catastrophe, of course.
And I'd have to think about whether that could actually qualify as the global component. Yes, it would be global in many respects, especially in the human terms, if it would affect global transshipment of goods, etc.
Well, it would hit both sides.